All right, now we're up to Death Smiles 2X. Now the X doesn't really mean anything. I think it's part of the.
I think it was because it was ported to the Xbox.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, and then like that's in the arcades it's known as Death Smiles 2, but for the Xbox 360 it's known as Death Smiles 2X.
Oh, so the X is for the console port. See, I thought
I'm assuming that's. I mean, it's a logical assumption.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it had to do with the fact that it was about Christmas, and I know there's all these puns with Xmas.
Well, that's also a possibility, but.
Yeah. What's the subtitle for it? It's like Death Smiles 2...
Death Smiles 2, like, Hell's Christmas?
Hell's Christmas.
I mean, that's how it seems to be translated. I don't know if it's... I mean, that's how it seems to be translated on CMO, so...
Now, Death Smiles 2 is not... I don't think it's in the US in any form.
I think it's on the Windows, like, downloadable service, but it's not translated.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Right, so you can get the Japanese version internationally, essentially.
Yes, yeah. And the subtitle is Makai no Merry Christmas, which would translate to Hell's Christmas.
Yep. All right.
Or Merry Christmas in Hell, whatever. Either way, you know.
Merry Christmas in Hell.
Who knows? I don't really speak it, but I think either way it could be argued.
So what we're listening to right now, and this is Don's pick, I'll just tell you all right now up front. Don picked Field Final 1 and I picked Field Final 2, so we are just getting, it's the last stage and we are just plowing through it hardcore. Field Final 1's track title is The Enchanted Palace. I think both of these are composed by Namiki, right? Like, I think...
No, actually my choice is composed by Kamikura.
Aha, but I think mine's Namiki though.
Yes, that is correct.
Yep. Okay, so you have a Noriyuki Kamikura track. So this is in May of 2010. So this is before Kamikura's sort of made his move to Falcom.
Yes.
They're still all technically Base Escape at this point.
That's correct. And like, I guess his inspiration for this piece was that he wanted to make something more aggressive and with more feeling than the final, stage music from the first game. But he also kind of included a little bit of that phrase that is heard in the first game's final stage.
Yes.
In the second half of the guitar solo.
Yeah.
So,
I know what you're talking about there. I think there's really good layering here. You can hear Kamikura, and I think he does this very well. When he brings in choir synths, he does a very good job. I think they sound excellent here. And I want to say, even though Don and I chose these two final stage tracks, some of the other stage themes are actually really well fleshed out. In general, when I first picked up this album, I wasn't sure that I liked it as much as the original Death Smiles, but over time, this has really grown on me. I've really come to appreciate and admire this soundtrack for what it is, and I just think there's a lot of maturity to the sound. So those are my comments, at least on Field Final 1. Now, as we move to Field Final 2, which is a Namiki track, this piece is called Elegy for the Fallen Angels, and there's a lot of great stuff here. Now, obviously, with Death Smiles having a gothic theme and the second game being about Christmas, there is a lot of church music, neo-baroque sound going throughout. So we get a really strong organ at the intro and then sort of backing off, but always present throughout. And then we have this sort of solo female vocalist, not necessarily operatic, but very refined and very mature voice. I just adore this style of music, and to find it as part of a final stage background music is really exciting for me. So that's why I chose this song. Yeah,
when Namiki was, I guess because he's the sound director for this as well, when he had to find inspiration, he said that compared to the first game, which was really easy to find inspiration because it's a Halloween theme, he said that the Christmas theme kind of felt out of place. So, overall, to find inspiration or even to compose for the game was more difficult. So, that's why there's much more variety as opposed to a unified theme.
Yeah. Now, if only they could just combine the games and then we'd have Nightmare Before Christmas. What they really need to do is do a Death Smiles project with a bunch of Yoko Shimomura, since she's already handled Nightmare Before Christmas in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, I don't know. I think people would be upset.
Well, I wouldn't want her to have the sole compositional duties, but I think, we've seen her work on some of the other premium arrange albums, and they're pretty good.
Yeah, that is true.
Alright, so we're not done with Death Smiles 2X, though, because there was additional music written by a whole bunch of people. Some of our favorite people that worked on some of the other arrange albums come in to do the Death Smiles 2X Music Pack Contents original soundtrack. This one was released in August of 2010, so it's a few months after Death Smiles 2X, but basically you get more Death Smiles back to back. The track you're hearing now is Field E. The track titles on this one, all it is a statement of what song it is. And this is Don's selection. This is Motoaki Furukawa, who, was he a Konami guy?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think like that Police Knots FN was Furukawa and someone else. That was the F in Police Knots FN. So he's like known for like good guitar work, and I think that's what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, aside from that, his good guitar work, I also like this tune because it's sort of a departure from what I'm typically used to hearing from him, which is that kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say porno kind of guitar music, but that's what it kind of reminds me of most of the time.
Yes, well, it absolutely is, and anyone who knows that Police Knots album, I referenced that. I mean, it's got porn groove all over it, man.
Yeah, so this was definitely more fitting with the whole Death Smiles atmosphere. There's like this kind of haunting kind of aspect with the piano, and it matches well with like the industrial kind of percussion and, this pretty rocking guitar that fits more with the first game than this game, but that whole universe is kind of wrapped up into one in this track.
Yeah, this track is definitely less sexy and more dark and foreboding. Not in the classical sense of, I mean, he's not using diminished chords or anything, but just the mood he sets and the instrumentation used. Let's take some time to listen to this one. I really like this one. Yeah, those guitar licks are just, that's classic Furukawa. That's really enjoyable. I love the sound, but I also love that break. After he introduces the main melodic theme, that break before he continues, and it's just sort of playful on the guitar. That's good stuff. Now, the song I chose is Field C. This is from, and I think we've heard from her earlier, but this is an original composition from her. It's Michiko Naruke, the Wild Arms composer. So this would have been Nora came out in 2012 or 2011?
Yeah, I think it was 2011.
Yeah, so this was one of her really, I would call it her comeback to composition, because she hadn't done composition for a while. So this was her, I think this was her getting her feet wet with composition before she went and did a full OST.
In that time, she was more composing for, Haruka Shimasuki with the whole Tendaria kind of trilogy.
Yes, yeah, she did do that project as well.
In 2009, but yeah, aside from the cave arrangements in 2009, this was her first, original kind of...
Yeah, original instrumental composition. It was,
Since when? 2007?
7?
Or was she just featured as a composer in Wild Arms?
I think in 5 and XF
she was just featured.
So it really would have been since Wild Arms 4, which was maybe 2005.
Yeah, if you don't include 2006 and her track on the FM Sound Module Maniacs. But yeah, for games, definitely 2005. So it was a 5-year little hiatus.
Yeah, and I think we're all happy to have her doing more stuff. I really hope she continues to do more work. I would really like to see her do work with Cave. I think that her style fits certain games and certain artistic themes that go behind the games. I think if they do less technological stuff and more, things like Akai Katana or Guange, more games in that vein, she would be perfect for. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's possible. I don't know. I think of her more as like her style fitting more with like Gust, at least because I think she emulated that Gust sound very well in Nora.
Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true.
And this thing we're listening to now, it's a nice mix of electronic and that very wild Armsy sound.
Yes, yeah, the brass, the trumpets, she makes them sound good, and that is, I'll tell you, as a fledgling composer, making brass sound good is really not an easy thing. Either from the synthesis, like the sampling aspect, and then also just from pure compositional, you have to know how to make them sound good. Because if you just assign them notes as if they were a violin or a piano, it's gonna suck. So I really like that she's very capable there. I really like this track on Death Smiles 2X. I really personally think she could do a good job doing a whole shmup soundtrack, but I guess that's between her and various developers to make it happen. Okay, now we're diving into some really awesome territory in the end of 2010. The first album we're going to be looking at is the soundtrack for Akai Katana. Now, Don warned me when I started collecting the cave music. He said, specific to Akai Katana, I was first able to get my hands on an album we'll be covering later, which is the Nintu Jump soundtrack, and it had some FM 8-bit arranges for Akai Katana. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. He's like, yeah, but the Shin Arrange album's the best. And then I got the Akai Katana original soundtrack, and right now you're hearing Stage 2, Scabbard Mouth, which is Koiguchi in Romaji. And I really like this soundtrack, and I'm like, Don, this OST is really good. And he's like, yeah, but Shin Arrange album is better. And I was like, okay, whatever. Well, when we get to Akai Katana Shin, we'll revisit that line of thinking. For now, though, let's talk about the original soundtrack. This is done entirely by Ryo Umemoto, who is the composer that we mentioned earlier, passed away in 2011 at a young age of 37 or 38. It was very tragic. But, man, he's such a good composer, and I feel like if you compare the Akai Katana compositions to his earlier works, especially his works on visual novels and graphic adventures, wow, has he matured and gotten better, you know? Like, this stuff is really good.
The track that I chose, when I was in Tokyo, he told me that he wrote this melody like 20 years ago, and he had never had a reason to use it, but when it was like, for this stage, he kind of just, reworked it a bit, but overall, like, this is like 20 years ago in the making.
Wow. Yeah, and I know that happens from time to time. A composer has a great melody and just waits for the right project. And I'm glad this was the project that he did it on. One, because it fits, and two, because, he didn't know it at the time, but there wasn't much time left. And, thinking now, posthumously, you gotta wonder how many other melodies he had stored away in his head that never made it. And that's depressing. Let's move on to the track I selected, which is Stage 5, Scabbard Tip. This is really interesting. By the way, that's Kojiri in Romaji. This is the final stage theme in the original game. Now, when Akai Katana Shin comes out, they add a new Stage 5, and then this track becomes the music for Stage 6. I really like this track. And the whole soundtrack has excellent guitar work. It's a guitar-heavy album, even the OST, which is more synthesized and doesn't have the guitar performance per se. I'm impressed by the way Umemoto is sort of able to pick up on what has become the styles for Cave. Bass Escape and Manobu Namiki sort of lay down the groundwork and really help define the sound for their games. But Umemoto, who is very diverse, is able to sort of lock in with that style and work it.
And couple little tidbits that I also have about this tune and the soundtrack in general is that he told me that the Stage 5 was definitely inspired by like Gundam, like the anime. It has that kind of orchestra, epic adventure kind of,
Well, yeah, those orchestra hits on the downbeat, the da-da, like that's very Gundam. I should also mention Akai Katana Shin is available in America on the Xbox 360 and is a very enjoyable game. So if you're digging the music you're hearing, well, we'll revisit it later because it gets even better. But yeah, you might want to check out the game itself. It's a very interesting kind of game. Obviously, it's a scrolling shooter, but there's a lot of different stuff going on with it. Okay, next up, Kota Takahashi, with a little bit of help from Kenji Ito. They take on the name Resonator, and they put together a very different sounding arrange album for Do-DON-PACHI DAI-FUKKATSU, which again is Do-DON-PACHI Resurrection in America. Don, I'm just going to let you sort of give your take on this album, the soundscape, and what it's all about.
Alright, well, it's quite different compared to the original and any arrange before. I guess the easiest way to compare it is kind of like the Konami like Power Pro, is that correct?
Oh yeah, the old MIDI Power Pro albums.
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't think of it offhand. So yeah, the MIDI Power Pro albums, because it's almost like parts of the arrangements are more like modernly influenced, and then like, for example, what you're listening to now is definitely like FM synthesized to the max,
Yeah, this is, total, the lead of it is FM synth. Some of the percussion might be beyond those capabilities, but for the most part, it's an FM synth arrange. And this is stage 4A that we're listening to, track 5 on this disc.
Yeah, and most of the arrangements were done by Kota Takahashi, except for one track, which is the first boss theme on the original soundtrack, Element Order, and that's quite a different arrangement. I'd never expected a piano ballad, very abstract piano ballad too, because the main melody is kind of hard to pick up.
Ito's good at going out there with a piano,
but when it comes to the stages that are designated obverse and reverse on the original soundtrack, he kind of adopts the same styles but kind of changes them up in different but noticeable ways. Although with stage 4B, it's more FM synth with just the new additional section added. I don't see as big of a change between stage 4A and 4B compared to something like stage 2A and 2B.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about there. Alright, let's move ahead. Let's skip ahead to the track I chose. This is the stage clear music. I think the first thing I have to say is anyone who takes a stage clear theme or any shorter song, something that's only, a minute, 90 seconds, and is able to do something substantial with it, that always excites me. I always get psyched about that. I love, for example, Metroid Metal's Item Room and Item Get is, amazing. And those two songs together are 5 minutes, and on an OST they're 12 seconds. So you got to be good to expand it. And I really like the style. I like that there's almost a sort of natural thing here. I mean, he's pulling samples of birds and insects in a forest or something. So it's almost like the sort of guided imagery albums or other self-help, healing, or help you sleep sort of sounds, and I'll just say I can totally get with that, so that's why I picked this track. In general, though, I will agree that this album is certainly different. There's a range of sounds. Few of them are reminiscent of anything else we've listened to so far, and I think that's a good thing. I like that there's just so much diversity in this collection of music, and by that I mean all of Cave albums. There's a lot of different stuff going on, and this was just one more example of them being willing to try something new and different. It's still electronic, but it's very different from, you know, the Bass Escape sound.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, let's step up to the last album of 2010. This is the first in what is currently a 3-album-long series. In terms of catalog numbers, Cave creates a new one, CVIS, the I standing for, I assume, iPhone or iOS. So CVIS 0001 is the DO-DON-PACHI DAI-FUKKATSU original soundtrack for iPhone and iPod Touch. So we're going to hear 2 more of these albums. Basically, they take the game and they give it a new soundtrack for iOS. And I think this one had some slightly different design than DO-DON-PACHI DAI-FUKKATSU in general. Is that right, Don?
Well...
Or is this...
I think maybe like gameplay or like scoring mode.
Yes, yeah,
but
it's the mode, but the stages are the same.
Yeah, the stages are the same.
Yep. So this is really exciting. This album is primarily composed, actually, yeah, almost entirely composed by Kenichi Yamada. And if you don't know that name, you'll probably know him by his moniker on the internet, which is Hyadane. He's the guy who does all those really silly and awesome vocal tracks, like the Final Fantasy IV boss ballad, all the Mega Man 2 robot. He sings as Robot Masters. There's this really awesome one about a flamboyantly gay Crash Man that I just adore. He has the Super Mario World song. He's just like this funny guy that does really cool music.
He's in fried chicken commercials in Japan, apparently. You know,
yes, yeah. So like he's just sort of everywhere, and like he's funny and a talented musician. And then out of nowhere, he does this full OST for a DO-DON-PACHI game. Now, the track that you've selected, which I think is you can't even argue, this is sort of obviously the best song on the album. Samba Metropolitania is just all kinds of catchy. And this soundtrack, there's hit or miss tracks here. It's not it's not a fully good OST in the way that a lot of the Namiki albums are. Like, this doesn't compare to Death Smiles, for example, but there are certainly some good tracks on here, but I think this is clearly the best one.
Yeah, all out of the entire, this track that you're listening to right now is the, you know, the reverse version of the original, but I mean, it's entirely remixed. It's not like they just add a new section. And
it's the Toy Box remix.
Yeah, it's a Toy Box remix, but it's used for the reverse stage.
Right.
And in all honesty, I much prefer Hirata's music to Miyamoto's arrangements on this entire album, and I kind of wish he just did the whole thing by himself, because his music is so much more interesting.
So wait, this isn't a Miyamoto track?
No, this is a remix by Shoichiro Hirata from...
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, he's...
So, and all of these, like, stage remix are from him, and he's mostly known for his Beatmania work, so...
Yeah. Now that said, though, the track that I have selected is Stage 4A. This is the Sky Gazer. So this is all Yamada. And
yes, that's correct.
I think this one just has a really solid melody. It doesn't have as much of the exciting or interesting decorations or accoutrements in terms of rhythm or backing harmony or other parts, but just in terms of having a really good catchy melody, I think that's what makes this one good, and I think that's something that Hyadane as a composer is good at.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the good stage themes, to be honest.
Yeah, some of them are certainly weak, as we've said, but this one is good. I will say also, and you're seeing this now on the screen, each of the 3 iPhone albums, the booklets aren't booklets, they're actually fold-outs, and they're posters. So one side is all the information, the other side's a poster. So you're seeing the poster for DO-DON-PACHI DAI-FUKKATSU, and you see all the girls there. I guess they're called dolls, because they're like, they were humans and they got made into fighting weapon girls. Like, their brains are weapons, because they can pilot things really awesomely.
Before we move on, and it's not something that we're featuring at the moment, I just kind of want your opinion on it. What do you think of the non-vocal version of Battle for the Laugh? Which is like the True Laugh boss theme, which is, compared to most, it's really unorthodox, but I just want to kind of see what your opinion of that one is.
I prefer it to the vocal.
Oh yeah, the vocal has the crazy high dance used to.
Yeah, that's a little much for me, but no, I think it's a good track.
It's fun and catchy, but to me it sounds like an Ace of Base song.
Yeah, I think it does sound like an Ace of Base song, and I like Ace of Base.
I'm just saying, when I hear that, I think all I can think of is Ace of Base. Like, let's get them to insert some, an original vocal tune on there and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is sort of how that one came out in the end.